President Cyril Ramaphosa on Friday announced that National Police Commissioner Khehla Sitole, his contract will be terminated early on the 31st of March by mutual agreement. Opposition parties have welcomed the move as this will lessen the tension between the police minister and his commissioner. But we ask the question tonight, what could have led to the president and the commissioner striking this mutual agreement? Is there more to this termination than what meets the eye? And does this mean the tensions within the South African Police Service have been resolved, and the early termination, does it resolve the mess within the South African Police? We're joined now by DA's Andrew Whitfield and the South African Police Union spokesperson, Lesiba Thobakgale. You can be a part of the conversation tonight by sending us your comments and questions tonight, 072-110-5584. Gentlemen, good evening, and thank you very much for your time. Lesiba joining us there via Zoom, and Andrew is on the line this evening. Andrew, let me start with you on the line joining us tonight. The termination of employment of Commissioner of Police Khehla Sitole. Is this based on his competence, or are there other interests at play within this termination?
Thanks very much for having me. I think that there are some verifiable, objective reasons why the President should have taken action against General Khehla Sitole, and I think that those are evident in the SAP's annual performance plans and their failure to adhere to certain basic requirements in terms of Section 205 of our Constitution. But at the end of the day, what the mutual agreement really means is that there's been a golden handshake, and we need to ask why. As you say, why has there been a mutual agreement when the President himself imposed a notice of intention to suspend on the General in September last year? That process should have concluded as would be the normal disciplinary proceeding in a case like this. Instead, the President has taken a shortcut and decided to terminate the General's contract prematurely. We think that this smacks of ANC internal politics, and we don't believe that this will certainly restore stability to the SAPS. In fact, if the proceedings hadn't been followed correctly, we believe that this may just prolong the instability within the ranks in the South African Police Service.
Yeah. Are we able to assess the Commissioner's record objectively, considering the fact that there was this ongoing tension between himself and the Minister of Police, and whether or not that could have been a hindrance on his carrying out his duties?
Yes, absolutely we can. I mean, we can just look, for example, at the SAPS Forensics Division, which has been an absolute abomination ever since the National Police Commissioner took over. We've seen a collapse of our forensic capabilities, our ability to analyze DNA case exhibits, backlogs exceeding the 200,000 case exhibit mark over the last couple of years. We've seen the shortage of rape kits at police stations. We've seen a scathing judgment in January 2021 by Judge Davis, where he found that the National Police Commissioner breached his duties along with two of his top generals when they went about procuring or attempting to procure the spy grabber technology prior to the ANC conference in 2017. So I believe that there's a long record of shortcomings, but that doesn't absolve the President from not following the correct process. This golden handshake raises more questions than answers.
Yeah, now you think because of this golden handshake or this mutual termination, he will escape accountability for all these issues that you're raising?
Well, I think that's part of it, but I also think that the ANC will escape any embarrassment, because General Khehla Sitole was starting to point fingers back at the ANC to say that former Police Minister Fikile Mbalula actually instructed him to procure this technology prior to the Nasrec conference. And I think this was the very quickest way for President Ramaphosa to make a big problem go away. And I think what we will also find is that the process to appoint a National Police Commissioner is inherently flawed. The President has tremendous powers in terms of the Constitution. We believe that that is problematic, because there should be a clear process involving an independent panel that's responsible for appointing such an important civil servant. We believe, in fact, that that was the Cadre Deployment Committee of the ANC that has made these recommendations in the past, which is why we've seen political appointees into the top position of SAPS for the last 15 years or so. It simply cannot continue as it is, and something needs to change.
That's Andrew Whitfield, the DA parliamentary member there, joining us on the line. We also have Lesiba with us. Lesiba, Sapu, you have called this mutual agreement something that needs to be interrogated, but also the firing of Khehla Sitole, you're calling him a political casualty. Why?
Thank you, Butabo. SAPU, as an independent union, which is not aligned to any political party, it has been clearly our view, even previously when we requested the president to intervene in the matter that was happening between the National Commissioner and the police commissioner, the police commissioner and also the minister. And subsequent to that, Butabo, we know what transpired when the National Commissioner was indeed served with a notice of suspension. And currently now we see that whatever that is happening, it is not even in the interest of the country. These are political interests where the National Commissioner himself, he finds himself being a political casualty. Because if you serve somebody with a notice of suspension, then at a later stage you reach a mutual agreement with them. Clearly you are buying them out of the system. And that is what we are seeing. And as a union, we would have loved to hear and see the National Commissioner indeed, if all of those allegations that are against himself are true, him accounting to whatever that is being placed before himself. But what we see him being bought out, and that clearly, it means that the SAPS itself, and even the public, even us, would not even know really what has transpired. It is quite concerning because the problem goes beyond the National Commissioner. Because if now the National Commissioner is the one who is out, what about the rest of the chaos that has been caused within the South African Police Services? How are we going to get to the bottom of all of these challenges that the SAPS has? Because these challenges were there before the current National Commissioner came in. They were there, and if indeed the cancer within SAPS is not being dealt with according to Thabo, we would still find ourselves not having a National Commissioner who would not finish their term. So it is indeed in the interest of politics more than it is in the interest of anything else.
Does the early termination, I suppose, answer the questions that we still have, for example, unanswered around the July unrest, right? Many have been calling for the firing of somebody, particularly when it comes to the inaction that we saw from the side of the police during that July unrest. Do we know now why and who interfered and why they interfered, or is this now a convenience to then can pin that on the terminated police commissioner?
The reason why, Thabo, to answer your question, is clear. The reason why we are saying that the National Commissioner, he finds himself being a political casualty. The minister is currently left in his position, but we know that the feud between the National Commissioner and the minister, it is the one that has caused for the SAPS to be where it is currently. So dealing with one and leaving the other, it still leaves a vacuum to say issues that revolved between these two men, because we said it previously as SAPS that the two bulls are fighting and the grass is suffering. Crime stats showed themselves. The lack of the provincial commissioner in the Northern Cape, even today, because the National Commissioner and the Premier could not find themselves. The non-implementation of restructuring, even that itself, it is because of the feud. Speaking to the non-appointment of the divisional commissioners like of crime intelligence, because the minister and the National Commissioner could not agree with one another. So those are the issues indeed which are in the middle of whatever that has been happening between the National Commissioner and the police minister. But if then the president deals with one and then does not deal with the other, so we are still going to find ourselves having a challenge of political interference, because the current minister, who has resumed the duties of being the National Commissioner, he will continue to do the very same thing because that is what he's best at.
Yeah. Should Minister Khehla be left given space to choose Sitole's successor?
Mr. Khehla, unfortunately, in terms of the Constitution, the minister is not even his prerogative to choose the National Commissioner. We are saying that the current Minister of Police should also face the very same fate that the National Commissioner has faced, because if he continues to be in his position, we would still see the problems that are there within the SAPS. That clearly, it is clearly motivated that somebody who has to come in and inherit the SAPS, they need to inherit an organization that is free of political interference. And with what we saw him, coming with the political interference and not giving space to the National Commissioner for him to do his duties. So that in itself, it is a problem. So he's not even eligible to elect or to even say so and so should come and be the next National Commissioner. The President has that prerogative, but we are saying this time around, the President should follow the National Development Plan, which clearly shows, as we saw with the JSC when the Chief Justice, when they went through the interviews. We want to see the very same processes which are outlined within the NDP, that we need to see we need to see, those interviews being done publicly so that whoever is the incumbent there, they would really gain the trust of the public in order to bring back the disconnect that is there between our communities and also our police, as we have seen. So we don't want to wake up to the news of having a National Commissioner in the morning and we don't even know who's this person, where do they come from. But we also further want to see somebody who is a seasoned police official, somebody who understands the operational, somebody who understands even the administrative part of the organization. A seasoned police official, there's a lot of them who are capable within the SAPS. We strongly believe that the President needs to look into that and apply the NDP, because that is the policy of government.
Let's continue in a moment. What is at the center of the crisis confronting this African Police Service? We'll look into that, and what should be the process followed then in finding someone with the necessary security expertise, but not only that, who is able to navigate clearly these factional divisions that are playing out in the party, but extending themselves into the work of the police. Do stay with us. DA is Andrew Whitfield, and the South African Police Union spokesperson Lesiba Thobakgale with us tonight. Also, your views on 072-110-5584 or tweets tonight at Newzroom 405. Back with you tonight here on In Focus, Newzroom Afrika, channel 405. The police commissioner terminating his employment early on mutual agreement with the presidency. What is behind the president and the commissioner striking this agreement is what we're trying to interrogate tonight, but also getting your views on 072-110-5584. We have Andrew Whitfield, who is the Shadow Minister of Police and member of the National Assembly for the Democratic Alliance, as well as the South African Police Union spokesperson Lesiba Thobakgale with us. Lesiba, I want to go back to what you're saying. I mean, it seems you believe, as SAPU, that the appointment of the police commissioner could probably be the silver bullet to solve all the issues the South African Police Service is facing. Are you saying the position of the police commissioner is the center of the crisis confronting the SAPS today?
We are saying that the manner in which those appointments are made, we strongly believe that, the lawmakers, when they looked at the National Development Plan itself, they saw a need that there is a way where things can be implemented or measures could be implemented clearly to show on how improvement can be done. And in order to avoid any other issues following the National Development Plan, it is the manner which we strongly believe as an organization that it will pave a very better way forward. Because the police itself, when we look from during the period of George Fivers, who was the National Commissioner previously, even going to the subsequent, being it Minister Khehla, being the National Commissioner at that time, Ria Pierre, Khomotso Phahlane, and currently with the current National Commissioner. The issue of political interference, they really play a big role. So the manner in which a national commissioner is appointed, if the NDP is followed strictly, we strongly believe that it will alleviate a whole lot of these issues that we see, and even the political interference itself. Yeah. Because that person would be there, having gained the public trust. The public would be knowing who's this person that they are dealing with. Yeah. The person would have sold themselves out. Those who will sit in that in that appointment board, they would ensure that they interrogate this incumbent so that when they come in here, they should understand that they are empowered to carry the responsibilities of policing in terms of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa and the South African Police Service Act and even employment regulations in the police. So politics themselves, we have been on record as SAPU that politics killed policing, and even now with what is happening, it is a clear indication that what SAPU has been saying all along, that politics killed policing, we have seen, and unfortunately, the country has suffered the scourge of politics killing policing. We have seen with what transpired within the SAPS, the issue of leadership. We have seen what happened during the July unrest. Everything has been centered around where people are looking for political interest, but not the interest of what policing is about. So we strongly believe that whoever should be appointed, they have to ensure that they are not politically motivated. They need to ensure that they are not here to serve any political interest. That will assist on how SAPS should go forward. Because without that, we would still experience a whole lot of challenges, and we will keep on the poor South Africans, because here we are dealing with the security and safety of the Republic, of the inhabitants of the Republic. Those, when we look at the crime stats, we have seen that the picture is not good. Those who are vulnerable, they will continue to find themselves being under the scourge of criminals. And that is not what we wish to see as the South African policing union.
Andrew, let's talk about that. Are we oversimplifying this matter of the crisis at South African Police Service when we are just narrowing it down to a recruitment process, to say, well, let's just make the recruitment process independent and then all our situations will be resolved? I mean, as Lesiba is saying, I mean, if you look at that timeline from 1994, from George Fiver's Khehla, Ria Piecha, Khomotso Phahlane, and now Khehla Sitole, none of them have been able to insulate themselves from political influence to a certain degree. One might even argue and say, well, if you look at, for example, the Western Cape province, there is still a role that political heads play there in, for example, the relationship in the policing in that particular province. So how possible is it that we could say, well, let's change the recruitment process and that will insulate the police commissioner from political influence?
Sure. So I'm not entirely aware of the specific example you're referring to in a particular province, but I would agree that the problem is far wider and deeper than simply the appointment process of the National Police Commissioner. And I actually agree with Lesiba. I think that you need an independent panel of experts who can transparently interrogate the candidates in a transparent manner for the public to also be able to see how that process is conducted, because the core problem is that the public has lost trust and confidence in the SAPS, and we need to find every mechanism possible to restore that public confidence back into policing so that communities can work together with police to keep our communities safe. That is the essence of the community policing doctrine, and until communities trust the police and are able to work together with them, we're going to continue to have a problem. One of the other elements, Thabo, is to look at SAPS discipline, and I'm sure that's something Lesiba and his colleagues are concerned about. The manner in which discipline in the policing environment is conducted is simply unacceptable. There's internal politics within the police. Certain people get treated differently to others. The manner in which the IPID is treated by SAPS in terms of investigating serious misconduct, corruption, and police brutality is a serious concern. There's a systemic a problem within the South African Police Service. But I think that in the context of this discussion around, the top cop, if I can put it that way, the National Police Commissioner position, I think that it would go a very long way if the process was independent, if the process was transparent, and if it was transparent to such a degree that the public were able to view the interrogation of the candidates so that we could get a better feel of who is leading our police service. Until the communities and the public at large are able to rebuild their trust together into the police service, I'm afraid that we're going to continue to face challenges. I fear that the dwindling numbers of police officers is a major concern. visible policing, underspending their budget. There are a range of issues that are far bigger than simply replacing the National Police Commissioner. But we have to start somewhere, and I believe that we can build immediate confidence by appointing a capable individual from the ranks within SAPS who's an expert police officer with the right skills, and B, by making sure that we remove Minister Khehla to show decisively to the public that the removal of Sitole was not just a political ploy, but that the President is in fact serious about cleaning out the rot and the dysfunction within SAPS.
Yeah. So, I mean, I agree with what you're saying to an extent that, of course, there are other deeper issues, for example, issues of discipline. If you look at the Gauteng example of the heist that we were reporting last week and the work of the police that they then did in investigating that particular matter. And in one of their discoveries, they find police uniform actually being used there. The Gauteng Police Commissioner saying, unfortunately, it's an indication that there are some within their own ranks who are, so to speak, rotten tomatoes, who are affecting the whole entire system. How do you deal with that? Do you then just say if you remove the head, you'll be able to then deal with those elements that would still remain even with a new police commissioner in place?
No, I mean, it requires a complete culture shift. We need to overhaul the South African Police Service, and appointing a new police commissioner is just one part of that process. We need to make sure that the recommendations from high-level panel, expert panels are implemented. We need to make sure that the NDP is taken seriously. The recommendations in there are incredibly progressive. There's the white paper on policing in terms of how we demilitarize our police service. But ultimately, you know, in terms of what the specific issue you're talking about, corruption has become a currency amongst many SAPS members. Now, while we have excellent members of the police service, unfortunately, for many people, corruption has become too easy because there are various layers of leadership which are failing. So we need to have an overhaul of the institutional integrity within the South African Police Service. That does start with leadership, and it ends with leadership. But in between all of that, it requires a systems change. We need to make sure that the policies are not interfered with. As my colleague mentioned earlier, there are excellent policies which guide policing in South Africa. Those need to be sacrosanct, and we need to adapt those policies where required to make sure that discipline is upheld, that there are consequences for criminal actions by police officers, and we need to send a strong message urgently. And lastly, I would just say that the Independent Police Investigative Directorate is not as independent as we would like it to be. The Minister should not have the powers to appoint the head of IPID. We believe that Parliament and a panel of experts should have that responsibility. We don't believe that politics should be involved in the appointment of such critical positions, let alone the National Police Commissioner. So there's a whole range of issues, Thabo, that need to be dealt with. But at this point, we have to get the first thing right, which is to make sure that the person at the top has unimpeachable integrity and is absolutely beyond reproach with the right skills, capacity, capability, and credibility to lead our troops in this war against crime in South Africa.
Yeah. Lesiba, will you as SAPU interrogate this mutual agreement a little bit more? And are you of the view that the commissioner should not be getting any form of package whatsoever? And will you be challenging that?
Thabo, remember even the contents of the agreement, the mutual agreement between ourselves and between the Police National Commissioner and the President. We do not know the contents thereof. We would have loved to know, because if you remember clearly, if somebody is subjected to a sort of an investigation where there is clearly him giving reasons why he was not supposed to be suspended. So what we were expecting is to see him being disciplined, like any constable being disciplined and so on. But instead, we see him being brought out thereof. But we don't want to dwell further deeper into the contents thereof. But we are just worried about the part of him not being able to account to what really happened. Because we clearly know that the National Commissioner was not afforded space to do his duties as the National Commissioner in accordance because of issues of interferences which came from the minister who now resumed the issues of the National Commissioner. So the contents of the agreement themselves, even if we could say that we would love to know, but that is quite a long shot to make. But what we want to see is what happens now with the subs going forward. We want to see the organization itself being overhauled. We want to see a board of inquiry that will look into the whole of subs itself. Because even if you just appoint the number one or the top cop without overhauling the police, without having a board of inquiry that will look into the subs itself, we would still have problems because we already have cabals. We have those who are siding with the minister. We have those that are siding with the National Commissioner. We have those that are ready to reverse the gains that were made by the National Commissioner, the current National Commissioner. We have those who indeed are waiting to see what really is going to happen. We have those who are in a confusion instead of the police looking into their mandate in terms of the Constitution to protect the inhabitants of the Republic and their property, to ensure that there is law and order, to ensure that there is public order maintained within South Africa. So there is a concentration has been moved to look into the battles that were going on, and even with the current developments of what is called to be the mutual agreement between the president and the National Commissioner. So I think our eyes need to focus on how do we fix the current subs so that the next incumbent could then inhabit a subs that is better, a subs that is there to carry its mandate, a subs that is there to ensure that safety and security is maintained within South Africa, because that is the main challenge that we find within our country.
Lesiba, appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on. And Andrew Whitfield, appreciate you. Thank you very much for joining us.